If I ask you, what does breathing do? At first impression, you may find this question almost silly. As long as we're alive, we need breathing to maintain oxygen exchange. This is basic physiology. But if breathing were only about staying alive, it would not have been discussed, observed, and refined for thousands of years across human culture, cultivation traditions, and medicine. What has long been overlooked is this: breathing is not merely the minimum requirement for survival, it continuously reflects the state of a person's life system. This is not a difference of skill level, it is a difference in what the overall body mind structure allows. From this perspective, breathing is not a tool you can simply use at will. It is a direct manifestation of how the life cycle itself is operating. In modern contexts, breathing is usually understood in three ways: merely as physiological functions to sustain life, or as emotional tools to help relaxation or stability, or as practice techniques to enter a certain state. None of these understandings are wrong, but they all share one underlying assumption: breathing is treated as a functional module outside the life system. As a result, breathing is constantly broken down, optimized, and operationalized, yet rarely placed back into the structure of life as a whole. The Taoist perspective is the opposite. In Daoist cultivation, breathing is never an isolated technique. It is a direct expression of how the life system is functioning. It is not a technique, but a process, not an accessory, but a foundation. In the Zhuangzi, there's a well-known and often misunderstood description of the breathing state of deeply cultivated individuals. The true person of ancient times slept without dreaming, woke without worry, ate without savoring, and breathed deeply. The true person breathes with the heels. Ordinary people breathe with the throat. Many people find this puzzling at first. How could someone breathe from the heels? Taken anatomically, it makes no sense. The lungs are where gas exchanges occurs. But Zhuangzi is not talking about anatomy. He's describing the depth and connectivity that breathing can reach within life system itself. Breathing with the heels does not mean air literally travels to the heels. It means that the expansion contraction dynamics of qi circulation driven by breathing has reached the deepest and most distal layer of the body. What this passage reveals is the relationship between breathing state and the level of life one can access. Even without talking about cultivation, this relationship is easy to observe in real life. Look at natural breathing across different life stages. For infants, breathing naturally centers in the lower abdomen. It is deep, full, and powerful. The belly rises and falls with each breath, carrying expansion, contraction to the whole body. For adults, the breathing center gradually shifts upwards to the chest. Under pressure, fatigue, or stress, breathing becomes shallow and fast, with movements mainly in the chest. Elderly people, especially near the end of life, the breathing center shifts even higher, sometimes reduced to faint movements in the throat. Breath becomes short, fragmented, and difficult to sustain. These changes are not the result of learning the wrong breathing technique. They are natural expressions of the overall body mind condition. In Chinese, death is described as losing one's qi. This refers not only to the end of gas exchange, but to the complete cessation of the internal circulation that sustains life itself. In traditional Chinese medicine and cultivation systems, breathing has never been viewed in isolation. the Nanjing Rite. With one exhalation, the meridian moves 3 cun. With one inhalation, the meridian moves 3 cun. One full breath moves the meridian 6 cun. This is not instruction, it is observation. Breathing rhythm and the movement of qi and blood are synchronized and mutually linked. Thus, the depth of breathing is not merely about where the body moves, but about the depth and strength of systemic connection. When breathing remains in the throat, the voice is weak and the limbs lack power. When breathing stays in the chest, foundational stability is insufficient. A person is easily anxious and externally driven. When breathing returns to the lower abdomen, the voice gains root, vitality becomes fuller, and steadiness emerges. When breathing becomes fully integrated, reaching what Zhuangzi called breathing with the heels, vitality, perception, and regulatory capacity enter a very deep level. This is what Daoist cultivation refers to as reversal. Reversal is not against nature, it is a return to the origin. Daoist texts often say, following the course, one remains ordinary, which is to go through the natural cycle of life, aging, illness, and death. Reversing it, one transcends to immortality, which is to go back to the source and transcend the condition of mortality. Here, reversal does not mean resisting nature. It means returning from dispersion, depletion, and upward drift to a more complete and primordial life structure. This is why Dao De Jing asks, concentrate qi to achieve softness. Can you be like an infant? This does not mean imitating an infant's movement. It points to a state of undivided wholeness, where circulation is intact and life has not yet been fragmented. In this context, breath methods were widely used in the pre-Qing period. The Dao De Jing says, things may move or follow, exhale, xu or blow, trade, be strong or weak, rise or fall. One of the most authoritative commentaries on Dao De Jing, the He commentaries, explains, exhaling warms, blowing cools. The Zhuangzi also record, exhaling and inhaling, 吹嘘呼吸, expelling the old and taking the new, stretching like bear and birds. This is what guiding and nourishing practitioners favor. Even though Zhuangzi, from a higher philosophical standpoint and as a high-achieved cultivator, treats breath methods aimed solely at longevity with certain degrees of irony, his account nevertheless makes one thing clear. In the practice of cultivation tradition of the pre-Qing immortality lineage, Shengxuan, dating back 2,000 years ago, breath training was already a common and foundational practice for health and longevity. Even though this does not point to the ultimate realization of the Tao itself, it nonetheless is the pursuit of cultivation on the beginning stages to preserve health and vitality. At this point, one thing becomes clear. If breathing were merely a technique you could deploy at will, it should work in all situations. But reality shows the opposite. The moment real pressure appears, breathing is often the first thing to break. It is not because you don't know how to breathe. It's because the issue no longer exists at the level of operation. When pace accelerates and pressures accumulate, what determines stability is not whether you remember a method, but whether the system itself has the capacity. If the system is tight, fragmented, and upward floating, any stimulus becomes overwhelming. Once breathing collapses, emotion, judgments, and reaction unravel together. That is why telling yourself, slow the breath, mostly only works in calm environments. In real life, it quickly fails. At that point, the question is no longer, which method should I use, but Does my current life system have the structure to carry life itself? When these threads are brought together, the conclusion is clear. In Daoist cultivation, foundational breath training has never been about mastering a usable technique. It is about something more basic and long-term, building and optimizing the structure of body-mind system itself. That is why breathing is treated as life's rhythm, not as temporary adjustment tool. Why breath methods sit at the beginning of cultivation, not as add-ons. When the problem is structural, technique is naturally insufficient. Not because technique is wrong, but because the level it operates on is limited. If, watching this, you begin to sense that the real question you face is not which method am I missing, but whether your current structure can carry the life you're living, then that recognition itself is already meaningful progress. If you're interested in training that starts from breathing to rebuild foundational structure, you may want to watch our overview video on long breath method. It is not meant to persuade you and promise no outcome. Its purpose is simply to clarify the position, boundaries, and intended audience in this training, so you can see more clearly where you currently stand and whether this path fits your present stage. There's no need to rush to decision. The ability to judge is itself part of cultivation. If you're ready, the video is there.